Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Vivek Paradarajan, and I'm at Grand Canyon University, and I'm going to be talking to you about in this short video about Windows and Linux and the differences between Windows and Linux operating systems or environments in the context of file systems in particular, and how what are some of the differences and similarities, if you will, and also how one would prefer either one of those environments in their business and how it might suit a certain business, and also talk about storage, how storage solutions in large enterprise and small enterprise networks. How does that work, right? And also, of course, lastly but not least, the ethical meaning of all this stuff. When we talk about data storage and file systems, how does that translate to, from ethical point of view, from a Christian point of view? So, real quick, the Windows environment, you have the NTFS, which is a new technology file system. That's the underlying technology that builds your file system in Windows. You basically have your alphabetized drive letters or volumes, C drive, which is usually the default, and then D drive and E drive for other media, including other, and you can pretty much map any letter to any drive additional than your beyond the additional default drive that you have installed. Linux is a little more it doesn't have any such drive letters. It's just a root file system, and from the root file system we have a slash notation to every folder structure, if you will, or every directory and path. So and every user will have like a home directory in Linux, which is a beauty of it. It's slash home slash Vivek, for example, in my case, might be my user home directory, based on the username. But these are some of the user phonetics. With that being said, the permissions, we can give permissions on both Windows and Linux, NTFS permissions, and Linux as well. We have user group and others. The permissions are granular on these folders and file structures. We can grant all kinds of permissions like read, write, delete, and complex patterns thereof based on who the person is, user, or maybe a certain group, like say administrator group, in both cases, or maybe he's a person of HR, and the person, or if the person is management group. So group access is pretty much the preferred way to give permissions in both environments. And at the same time, in Linux, I forgot to mention that there are different flavors of file systems. You have the XT4, and we have XFS, all different, made by different organizations. XT4 is more for distributed environments. XFS is more for single distributions. So when you have a Linux in a cluster, like in the cloud, with different operating systems or different flavors of Linux, you prefer XT4. Anyway, with that being said, where do you use Windows versus Linux? Linux is typically used in the servers area. If you have a server or you're hosting a bunch of services as a company, usually server operating systems are Linux based. Windows are usually client based because it's easier to use and it doesn't have much technical overhead. The average user can use a Windows and do his job, his or her job. Think about administration offices, dentist offices, banks. I'm just giving an example. Like, you could be a front desk using a Windows system. Linux is a little more technical and a little more requires a little more in-depth knowledge. So if I was in a business supporting services, I would be using Linux for sure. And last but not least, in storages, you have two different types. You basically have a network attached storage, which is NAS, and a storage area network, which is SAN. As the latter suggests, it's storage at scale in a network. So the storage itself is like a network of orchestrated servers that store data from different in its own dedicated network. So a little more redundant, a little more fault tolerant. Versus NAS is just think about it like this huge array of disks that is attached to your network, and it's like a single point of failure, if you will, right? So if that disk fails, the network doesn't have access to that storage. So it's like a big server rack that stores things in your network. That's what it's called, network attached storage. Versus SAN is more orchestrated, a little more redundant, and it's its own network, and it works on fiber optics, so it's very fast and very efficient, and so on and so forth. Last but not the least, whichever path we take, based on cost, Linux, Windows, whichever solution we have in our office, in our organization, we should really protect data. End of the day, data is important, but we need to protect data according to its classification, using all the principles of least privilege, need to know, We need to log access to data. We need to be very mindful of who we're giving access to, what kind of data, and these things need to be played in mind, because ethically, privacy and private healthcare data, things of that nature, private information needs to be all protected, and one must take due care and due diligence in the context. Thank you.